Every single time you sit down at Sunday dinner, your parents look at you and say the exact same thing. When are you going to stop throwing your hard-earned money away on rent and finally buy a house? But then you open up your phone, log onto social media, and the internet aggressively screams the exact opposite advice. Renting is actually a life hack. Just rent your apartment and invest the difference. To make matters worse, you go to work and your coworker who just bought a suburban home claims it is the single best financial decision he has ever made in his entire life. Meanwhile, your other coworker across the hall whispers that he hasn't slept a single wink since his home inspection report came back, showing structural foundation cracks. It feels like absolutely everyone has an incredibly loud opinion on the great rent versus buy debate. But here is the secret. Almost nobody runs the actual math past month one. They just look at the upfront cost or the immediate emotional satisfaction and call it a day. But we aren't going to do that today. We are going to find out the absolute truth. So, let's do something completely different. Let's take two real people with the exact same starting income, living in the same city, with the exact same initial cash budget. One rents and one buys. We aren't going to rely on vague gut feelings, emotional vibes, or outdated family advice that worked 30 years ago but doesn't apply to the modern economy. Instead, we are tracking every single dollar, including rent increases, mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, home maintenance, market leverage, and compounding stock market investment returns. We are going to simulate their entire financial lives and watch how their wealth builds over a timeline of 10 years, 20 years, and ultimately 30 years. Because when you let the raw numbers run their course, you discover that one of these two people is quietly building massive, life-altering generational wealth, while the other is silently bleeding cash. The financial gap after 3 decades is absolutely devastating, and the winner? Well, it is definitely not who you are expecting to come out on top. Welcome back to Emma Invests. Let's set our stage and introduce our two contenders. Jake and Adam both earn exactly $55,000 a year after taxes. They live in the exact same mid-sized city, work at the same company, and have both managed to save up a grand total of $60,000 in cash. They both want the exact same lifestyle setup. A nice, clean 3-bedroom place with a reasonable daily commute to the office so they don't spend hours stuck in traffic. Adam decides that he wants stability, so he goes out and buys a home priced at $300,000. He puts down 20%, which takes his entire $60,000 life savings. To fund the remaining balance, Adam takes out a standard 30-year fixed mortgage at an interest rate of 6.5%. This means his base monthly payment for the loan principal and interest comes out to exactly $1,517 every single month. But as any homeowner will tell you, the mortgage payment is only the beginning of what you actually owe to live in the house. We have to add in local property taxes, which run roughly $250 a month, and a standard homeowner's insurance policy at about $130 a month. When you add those up, Adam is looking at a baseline of around $1,900 a month, going completely out the door just to keep the keys. And remember, that $1,900 figure does not even touch the cost of home maintenance, repairs, or unexpected emergencies. But don't worry, we will calculate those costs shortly. Meanwhile, Jake decides to take the rental path. He finds a comparable 3-bedroom townhouse right next door and leases it for $1,400 a month. Because he is renting, he does not have to pay a massive down payment. He keeps his $60,000 completely untouched in his hands. Instead of letting that cash sit in a low-interest bank account, Jake drops the full $60,000 straight into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Historically, the broad stock market averages an 8% annual return over long periods, so that is the baseline return rate we will give him. On paper, Jake's monthly housing cost is a clean $500 less than Adam's total initial monthly layout. On day 1 of this experiment, Jake looks like the absolute smartest guy in the room. He is paying less money per month, he has a huge investment portfolio, and he sleeps soundly. He gets to rest easy knowing that if the house furnace suddenly explodes at 2 o'clock in the morning, it is completely someone else's financial problem to solve. But there is an invisible economic trap that Jake does not realize he is walking into. Something that will take a few years to show up, but will completely rewrite his destiny. Let's watch how the first 3 years play out for both of our contenders. Because honestly, for the first 36 months, Jake is absolutely crushing it. Jake is living incredibly light. If the roof leaks or the appliances break down, his landlord handles it. His only real costs are his flat rent and a tiny renter's insurance policy. Meanwhile, his initial $60,000 stock market investment has been quietly compounding in the background, growing to roughly $75,600 without him adding a single extra dollar. Adam, on the other hand, is having a much more painful and stressful homeownership experience during these exact same 3 years. On day 1, before Adam could even move a single cardboard box into his new home, closing costs hit his bank account for an extra $9,000. Then come the ongoing property tax hikes, rising insurance premiums, and routine home maintenance costs, easily costing him an extra $3,000 to $6,000 annually just to maintain the property. But here is the part of homeownership that really stings, and it is the part that most eager buyers completely ignore until they see their first statement. In the early years of a 6.5% interest mortgage, almost your entire monthly payment goes straight into the bank's pocket as pure interest, rather than lowering your loan principal. In year 1 alone, Adam pays over $18,200 in total mortgage payments, but roughly $15,400 of that amount is pure interest kept by the lender. That interest money vanishes into thin air just like rent does. Real estate agents call it building equity, but right now, the bank is the one building equity using your wallet. Let's look at the official Year 3 scoreboard. Jake has paid $50,400 in total rent and possesses a highly liquid $75,600 stock portfolio that he can cash out at any time. Adam has poured over $113,000 into his total housing outlays, yet he has only built about $9,500 in true home equity. If the story ended right here, renting wins by a complete landslide. But our story does not end at year 3, and what happens next over the subsequent decades is where most people's understanding of this entire financial debate falls apart completely. Year 4 arrives, and Jake's lease comes up for renewal. His landlord raises the rent by a standard 4%. It is only an extra $56 a month, so Jake barely even notices the change. But then, the next year rolls around, and it goes up again. Then, the year after that, it goes up again. Each individual annual increase feels completely manageable to his budget in isolation. But rent is a variable cost that historically only trends in one macro direction, straight up. It is exactly like a backpack that someone adds a single tiny pebble to every single month. You don't notice the weight of the first 50 pebbles, but by the time you reach pebble number 200, you are completely hunched over and struggling to walk forward. Now let's look over at Adam's core mortgage payment. It is still exactly $1,517 for his loan principal and interest. That specific number is completely locked in place by legal contract. That monthly payment number remains identical on month 1, month 120, and month 360. It never changes by a single penny. This is the quiet economic mechanism that most lifelong renters completely miss. A fixed mortgage is a static cost that currency inflation slowly makes cheaper in real-world terms every single year. In year 1, that mortgage payment feels incredibly heavy to Adam. By year 10, it feels completely normal. And by year 30, it honestly feels like a minor rounding error in his monthly budget. Let me put the real projected numbers on this so you can see the scale. If Jake's rent grows at a highly conservative 3.5% per year, his rent becomes $1,870 by year 10. By year 20, his rent climbs to roughly $2,510. And by year 30, Jake is paying approximately $3,370 every month for the exact same apartment, while Adam is still paying his flat $1,517. Because of this fixed-rate dynamic, something major starts shifting around year 4. And by year 6, the math has completely and quietly reversed itself entirely in Adam's favor due to a secret weapon called leverage. Historically, U.S. home values grow at roughly 3% to 4% per year. At a standard 3.5% annual appreciation rate, Adam's $300,000 house is worth about $347,000 by the time they hit year 6. But remember, Adam didn't actually put $300,000 of his own cash into that house. He only put $60,000 down. Because he earns appreciation on the total asset value, his actual cash return rate is a massive 17.5%. Meanwhile, Jake's index fund is returning a solid 8%, but he only earns that return on the exact specific amount of cash he has sitting in the account. There is no structural multiplier effect helping him. Let's fast forward all the way to the final 30-year mark. Over 3 decades, Jake has spent roughly $193,000 on pure rent payments, and at the end of the day, he owns absolutely nothing tangible. If his $60,000 index fund was left completely untouched, it grew to about $129,500. Adam spent more total dollars on taxes and maintenance, but his home is now worth $423,000. His mortgage balance is 0, and he sits on massive equity. In reality, renting only wins if you have the iron discipline to actually invest the monthly difference without ever touching it. If you want more real, data-backed breakdowns that cut through the financial noise, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next video.